Hey guys, it's Ken here, and today I want to talk about my new channel, the Autism Experience. And so, for anyone who doesn't know what this channel is about, it's a platform where I get to talk about my experiences growing up with the disability autism, as well as I talk about the challenges I faced growing up with it, topics that are related, such as my experience being in special education classes, some interesting articles or stuff that I find, you know, you know, on the internet or anything in particular that relates to that, as well as other topics too, like social issues or cultural trends or just weekly updates about myself as I grow up in the 21st century. Things like figuring out what I'm going to do when I graduate, or any how my personal life's going and things like that. And so, an open platform where I could share my experiences to the world and be able to, talk about some of the issues or some aspects of my life that really matter, that might even speak to you personally, especially if you know someone or you're interested in learning more about autism or what things are like from the perspective of one person with it. Though, as a disclaimer, this channel is not meant to be reflective of all people with everyone with autism, because autism, while we may share certain commonalities among each other, it affects us differently, and so this should be taken as one particular view out of many. So, so, so you don't like take my word for it. Everything. This is just my perspective, my point of view, the way I see things, and I want this to be an open and honest conversation about different topics that I'm going to be covering, on this channel, as well as my podcast and my Instagram. And so, the big question is kind of, why did I start this channel? Like, what got me into podcasting, which then got into this YouTube channel right here and Instagram. And so, to talk a little bit about that, this all started when I was young, when one of the things that I was dealing with growing up with a disability was finding friends, finding people that mattered to me. And hold on a second. Sorry. Finding people that I could be friends with, and people who could look past my disabilities and see me for the human being I am, because I'm an adventurous person. I like to meet people and to get to know them and really make a difference in society and really do that. And so, going through college and high school, I've been bullied, I've faced moments of discrimination, just felt isolated, because there will be times where I have a lot to say but no one to say it to. And so going through college was challenging. I've tried volunteering, I went to clubs, and started working hard and advancing through my schoolwork. And while there are great opportunities, I met wonderful people. I've got to be more acclimated to the college environment and what it's all about, and which ends up inspiring me to consider a career in education, in the future, not as a teacher, but as an advocate for education, and serving in that kind of capacity. And also, I felt that there was something that I was missing, in spite of all this that I've done, in the past, whether it's volunteering for the city of San Jose, for their history park, exhibits, or working for jumpstart a physics club and music club at Evergreen Valley College, and helping students, encouraging students to get involved, or even tutoring students who are at risk in math and English courses. And while those are great opportunities, I wanted something for myself. I wanted to expand beyond that, something more personal to me, sort of like a diary, like a place where I could bring up these issues that are personal to me and put them out there. Perhaps, maybe there's some of you out there who might benefit from this information. Maybe people who have autism who want to know someone who has gone through that to some degree, and perhaps learn things from a different perspective. All of these possibilities out there. And the first thing I tried was blogging. I tried blogging on Tumblr for a bit, and it was kind of nice. It was like writing a diary in a way, but it's all out there, public, online. And while it was fun, it was very challenging to be able to get through creating a blog in the first place because of writer's block. There would be days where I would be looking at my desk, I'm like, I don't have anything to talk about. What am I going to talk about? am I gonna write something that's interesting or substantial enough to put out there on the internet? And that's something I struggle with. And after just months and weeks of having trouble finding something to write about, or somewhat feeling like I'm forcing myself to write, I came to a point where I told myself, maybe writing's not for me. Maybe I should try something else. And so another thing I tried was vlogging. I tried vlogging on YouTube for a bit. I did some daily vlogs where I talk about myself. I also like talk about what am I doing in the day, or some things that matter to me, like my volunteering work for Best Buddies, this group for meant to support students with disabilities, things like that. But eventually got bored of that too, and so I was in this mad search for a passion until one night where I woke up and I asked myself, what's wrong with me? Why am I not able to enjoy any of these activities? Like, I know I need a platform to be able to talk about my experience and be able to reflect on it and perhaps share them with other people and sort of learn from them, as well as me sort of getting to know them too. Why I'm not enjoying that? Like, it's something I like doing. Like, when I'm by myself, I like to talk or think about these issues on head. It's almost as if I have a lot more to say when I'm by myself or in a small group than in a large crowd setting. Let's say if I'm giving a speech or something to a group of people. So I have all these ideas out there in my head, and I needed a place to put them down because I feel like they're valuable, they're insightful, and I think I want to be able to contribute to the ongoing conversation about the overall experiences of students with disabilities, and as well as provide my viewpoint, which could be beneficial in many ways. And so after struggling for a bit, I reached out to my psychologist, where we talked about this, how I found it difficult for me to find a passion for myself, because eventually I would get quickly bored from it and wonder if I'm ever meant for it, or maybe it's not my destiny to be geared towards to this passion or one thing or another. Or perhaps I'm not meant to be blogging or podcasting or whatnot, things like that. And so during our talks, one of the things that we brought up was that passion isn't about finding something that will instantly bring you joy, because there will be moments where you will feel depressed, where you won't be happy with yourself, and you have to accept that. And there will be times where you don't want to work on your passion, even if it's something that you initially set out to do, if you want to set out, so that you commit yourself to. And so when you think of passion, you have to think of it from a different perspective. Think of it not just as something that brings you instant joy, but think of it as something you're willing to commit to, even when you're bored. Because you look at many famous writers, artists, poets, the world's renowned artists. They get bored too sometimes. They even get unmotivated at times, or suffer through writer's block to some extent. But they still keep going, because no matter how challenging it is, they're willing to put the time into it to make it work. And if a hobby doesn't work out for you, that's okay. Perhaps you haven't yet found something you're willing to commit to. So that's another way to look at passion, besides of just something that just simply defined as something you never get bored of. And so as we explored that, one of the ideas that brought up was podcasting. And when I thought of podcasting, I was like, can I do podcasting? Like, can I? I mean, I have to be the next Joe Rogan or something to be able to pull off a podcast. But then my psychologist was telling me, not every good writer that starts out doesn't think that they're a great writer. That title usually comes from outside. And so, if you really like to do something, don't think about what other people might think about your content. Think about, what do you hope to achieve? Like, is this something that brings you joy? Is this something you care about? Because honesty sells, passion sells. Like, if people could sense that you put a lot of time, dedication to it, and that you really care about what content you're putting out there, like you care about it, like you really mean it, that will sell. It doesn't have to sell to everybody. You can just impact just one person. It only takes one person to change anything. If you're a musician starting out and you put out one song, important thing is you have at least one listener, because when that listener goes to your product and they listen to it, it will affect that person's way of thinking, which could then extend to how that person goes about her life, which goes out. Maybe he might even tell his friends, hey, look, check out this guy, which creates a ripple effect, which indirectly could be attributed to somewhat degree to your work. So that's all it takes, just one listener, to make an impact. And so with that in mind, I came out of one of our sessions like just feeling better about myself, and thinking if that's something that I could do, podcasting. I mean, it may have been an idea just thrown around in the spur of the moment, but it could actually work. I could see myself pulling this off, even though I never done an opportunity where I actually directly put myself out there in public. I mean, except talking in person, but I never actually been the producer of content before. And so when I got into my car, I pulled up Instagram because I got a message, and right when I opened it, I got this ad about this new free podcasting platform that's easy to do. You can just do it on your phone. You can talk about anything, and then once you upload it, they'll take care of the rest, distributing it to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all these different platforms. And it's funny because we were in the set, because a couple minutes before that, I just came out of a session where we talked about podcasting as an interesting idea to explore. And now I get hit by this ad that talks about podcasting. Like, isn't that coincidental? It's almost as if someone was watching over me and telling me, hey, you want an opportunity? You want to try something? Here, try this. And it's even more interesting when in that session, we also talked about how to find your passion, you have to try different things. And then once you obtain enough experience with that, then you can come to a general consensus of what you're capable of, what you're interested in, and some things that are very valuable that you've learned about yourself. So, and I looked at it like, it's free. It's easy to do. And it's all done in an app. I'll do it. So I ended up downloading it. I did my podcast, and I listened to a couple tutorials where they taught you what are some things you should know about podcasting and some ideas on marketing the podcast, or even what to say when you hit that record button, and how to keep it going, and how podcasting, unlike other different mediums of communication, it's mostly freeform, because although you usually start out with a topic that you want to talk about, explore, that question often sprouts into a whole realm of different topics, especially if you're doing this with another person, because you might have a list of questions you want to ask that person. But the way they answer it opens up all these different opportunities for conversations, often to the point where you end up getting sidetracked with, but that's okay. Podcasts generally, are freeform. It's all about taking an idea and launching off there and see which direction you could take it in and explore it together, because you don't have to be an expert in podcasting or the subject area that you're dealing with. You just need an honest, very introspective mind that can receive all this information and reflect on it and explore it. That's all it takes, an open mind. And so my first podcast, I talked about the same things I'm talking about here. Like, why did I start this? What is this all about? All that. And I uploaded, and then I also did, and it actually worked. Like, after I did that podcast, as well as a bunch of random ones I did about where I pick out some experiences from my own life, I actually ended up enjoying it. Like, I never thought I could enjoy podcasting and just continuously talking about my own experiences. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, just constantly talking and just being able to have a platform to do all that. Like, gosh, like this is like my home now. Like and it's so simple to do, and it's really fun though about how many directions I could take this podcast. And so I told myself, I think podcasting is the place to go. Like, I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to work on it, and I'll keep posting on it because it's very fun, it's very fulfilling, and it accomplished a lot of what I've been looking for. Just having a place to speak my mind out and to talk about it. Personal experiences, or even, give some insights onto some different things I observe in this world. Whether it's social trends or things like going on in pop culture, like who's the next big artist or things like that. Although this podcast is more about Autism Experience, but those are something else. That's for something else though. But I'll get into it later. And so it started blossoming, and I've been continuously making podcasts ever since, uploading them, occasionally having people on there, although I've only done it once though, my sister and whatnot, and using it to talk about different topics such as coronavirus's effect on higher education, what I think about the state of higher education after the coronavirus, caused many different institutions across the country to close down, and leaving people wondering, well, what's the future going to look like for education right now, especially with the shelter-in-place order. So all these different topics that I ended up exploring quite extensively, and although this is only the beginning, I'm barely starting out, I think this is a very fun thing to do, and I hope to keep doing it and be able to share more content with you guys and be able to bulk and unite in just exploring common human experiences, as a whole, and to really explore the autism experience itself, as well as just our love of humanity and connection and building community. And so as I continued to build podcasts, there was a point where I wanted to talk about something, where I wanted to talk about, my experiences in college, and when I started doing some initial podcasts about my college experiences, I ended up digressing quite a bit from the original intent of the podcast, which is the Autism Experience, which although it sounds kind of interesting, adds more variety to the podcast, I felt like it's valuable, but it deserves a different place though. And I thought, what if I could merge that content with my podcast? And I initially tried that, but I realized that if I'm going to be talking about, say, what are some cool things to learn about graduation, or what are some cool things I found about, let's say, Taylor Swift's newest songs or music video, like that's probably is cool to talk about, but not really relevant. And I wanted to keep my podcast tightly focused and not lose track of the subject at hand. And so I thought, if I have all these great ideas and they're lying on the shelf, what if I put them to good use? What if I make a completely new podcast that's geared towards, other topics that are not related to the autism experience? And so I remembered thinking about that, and I decided to make another podcast, and I realized if I'm going to be exploring, these kind of topics where it's about social issues, political issues, or, all these common human experiences, it would help to have another person on board to bounce ideas off of. Because when I'm doing this podcast, although I'm going on, like right now, it's like about 20 minutes in, and I'm really still talking. Although I have these moments, sometimes there are moments where I only spend like 5 or 10 minutes though, mostly because these are all ideas from my head, and at some point I'm going to run out of ideas. And so having an extra person is nice to bounce ideas off of, because you have two people, although similar, have different perspectives, and it's nice to be able to get to know the other person's perspective, but also have an extra person that could take the conversation we're having into different directions. So it's almost like a mini debate format, but not quite, more like a discussion. It really adds a lot of different ways of approaching podcasting. And so I thought, but who would I do a podcast with? Because it has to be someone who's very open-minded, someone who I'm really comfortable with talking about these issues, talking about sensitive topics and things that are very important to me and things I want to explore. Who's open to that? And so I looked at, around, and I remember that, there was this one college friend I have that I ended up, getting to know more and I guess getting closer to. Like one of my college buddies, Denise, who shared a couple classes with me, and now we've known each other for like, I guess technically 2 years. I mean, we saw each other in the beginning when I first started at San Jose State, but we never quite got acquainted with each other until beginning my second year. Until I guess 2 years though, but anyway, whatever. But I remember the moment that I had one of my college buddies who I love talking about social issues about. Like we would share memes that people post on the internet, or we talk about the economics though, because my college buddy Denise, she's taking some econ classes right now. She's an econ minor, so her exposure to econ kind of got her, started on thinking about economics and thinking about the economy. And sometimes we would talk about free market system or all that, which is very, I guess socio-political, socio-economical. And so I noticed, and sometimes I would notice that we would go on and on for hours and hours. And I'm like, looking at these conversations that we've had in the past, I'm like, dude, this is great material for a podcast, another podcast. And so I reached out to my friend and asked, hey, would you like to do a podcast, Denise? Would you like to be a co-host of mine? And he was like, sure, yeah, sure. And so we instantly started a podcast, and now we're doing it a bi-weekly thing, And by the way, if you guys are interested, it's called the Americana Sundai. It's bi-weekly podcast where we talk about social trends, any topics about pop culture, or even stuff from our own experiences, like travels to Europe and what we learned from them, or travels to other parts of the country and things like that. Like our first podcast we talked about raves, and we touched a little bit on the Asian American identity and how that speaks to why, at raves, there's a significant amount of Asian Americans that make up the group of ravers that go to these raves, things like that. And so if you guys are interested, you can find it at anchor.fm / the Americana Sundai. You can also find it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and lots of different podcasting platforms you can think of. Like, I think Audiobooks has it. I'm not sure, but anyway, I'll put that information here just in case you guys you'd like to see that. So yeah, Americana Sundai. And so with 2 podcasts now on my plate, I was like, man, I'm really loving this podcasting idea. I would definitely see myself doing this for a long time, like even forever even. Like, it's really fun. And even if I have writer's block, like even if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, there's just so much I can do with this podcast, so much to talk about even. And even as I grow up, now in the 21st century, there's so many new experiences I'm going to be having. I mean, I'm only 22 right now, but that's still pretty young, and I think there's a whole world out there that I have yet to experience. So that's another opportunity to bring up too. So having podcasts about that. But then there's that thing I want to address too, is how did I end up getting on Instagram and YouTube for this channel? And so a lot of it stemmed from one of my side projects that I'm working on right now, where for the end of my last semester, which is this semester, I was intending to release some sort of like a kind of video that commemorates a lot of different experiences I've had growing up in college and things like, and my accomplishments in college, things I'm proud of, etc. And while I was making that, I realized that I like video editing. I like videos because they're a very valuable medium to convey your content. Sometimes visuals add a lot to storytelling too, not just auditory, and that's something I wanted to explore too. Because I've seen vlogs from people out there, and some of them who from San Jose State, and I thought, man, like, it's not as, looks interesting, looks cool. Maybe I could try that, like vlogging. Where it's not just, instead of just talking about, where not only I'm talking about my own experience, but also use it as a platform, as a way to enhance my platform, Autism Experience. Like, vlogging is a very valuable tool to do that. And so I decided, I'm going to start an Instagram. I'm going to do that sort of as a way to reach out to people, also as a central place where people can ask me questions or talk to me or even share updates about my podcast. So, like that. And then for YouTube, perhaps what I'm planning to do is to record my podcast with video. And then if people want to just hear the audio only, they can always go to the podcasting platform. And all that stuff I'm going to give at the end of the video, so don't worry. And now here I am with YouTube channel and Instagram, and it's pretty brand new, a lot newer than my podcast, but I'm hoping to grow it and be able to expand it, at some point in the future, and keep adding more content to it as I go. And so there we have it. I have the history of my podcast, Autism Experience, and how I came to this point right now. The YouTube channel, 2 podcasts, and an Instagram account. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. But anyway, I think the last question I want to address is, what do I get out of this? Like, what do I hope for in the future? I mean, what I enjoy about YouTube and podcasting, or just all of this in general, is the opportunity to be able to share my experiences and be able to do it honestly and really introspectively. To be able to take my experiences and be able to share it with other people, perhaps in hopes of helping in a way, like sharing people my experiences on what my life like and tell my side of the story. And perhaps maybe on a long-term benefit, like perhaps maybe reach out to people who do connect with this kind of material, who really like this kind of content and love more. And so, although I'm not sure what to think of it, but I could say that it's a very fulfilling thing for me to do, this podcast and all, and this channel, and the Autism Experience in general, and it's something I hope to explore and keep going with. And so that's it for this video. This is meant to be a general introduction to my channel and what the Autism Experience is. And so I want to say, before I go, I want to talk to you about my other channels and things like that. And so I have an Instagram account. It's called the Autism Experience. So here's the link right here to my Instagram account. It's open, so you can add me, follow me, whatever. You can also message me there if you have anything you want to ask me about. And I tend to be a little busy, but I will do my best to get back to you or talk to you whenever I can, and probably talk together. And because while I'm still learning and still trying to navigate through my life and understand a little bit about myself and the world around me, I hope that, if there's any question, at the end of the day, I just hope we can get through it together, figure it out together. Just because I'm just learning as much as you are when it comes to these experiences. And also, my podcast, the Autism Experience, it's available now on Spotify. It's also available on Anchor, which is my primary source for podcast distribution. I'm trying to get it onto Google Podcasts and other platforms, but so far it's just Spotify right now and Anchor that's working reliably. So, but interestingly, on the other hand, the Americana Sundai, which is a different podcast entirely, which I'm co-hosting with Denise, it's bi-weekly. You can find it on Spotify, Anchor and Apple Podcasts and other podcasting platforms, even Google, I think, as well. So yeah, I mean, Anchor takes care of all the distribution, so I'm still trying to figure out and learn this stuff. But generally, if anything, here's the direct link to the Anchor podcast. So the Americana Sundai, I'll just put it here. I'll also put Spotify since I know for sure it's there. So there you go. But don't worry if you haven't caught with this. I'll put it in the description as well in case like you need a direct way to reference it. And this YouTube channel, the Autism Experience. It's brand new, but I'm gonna keep adding more stuff, so stay tuned. So if you like this, feel free to like this video, press subscribe on my channel to stay tuned for more updates, more content. You can also follow me on Instagram and look at my podcast on the links provided. And I'll say thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this video. I know it's a little bit long, like we're cutting it like a little over 30 minutes, but it's a very great, wonderful opportunity, to have here to be able to share these things with you guys and be able to go through this journey together, because I'm not necessarily doing this for money or just for benefits, but I'm doing this for myself, and I'm hoping that you guys enjoy it too. Being able to enjoy this kind of content, being able to learn more about these things and things that I want to talk about, because at the end of the day, the most important thing I want to do is to form a free and open community that could foster connection and happiness and growth, the kind of things that we need in spite of these hard times we're going through right now, and a sense of a better way to connect with humanity as a whole. And so without further ado, I want to say thank you guys so much. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other content at the links provided, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. All right, stay safe, stay healthy. All right, take care.